Have you ever wondered if the monsters are actually the ones holding the keys? The silence of Sector 4 was the heavy, suffocating kind that pressed against your eardrums, until you wanted to scream just to prove you were still alive. But Elias didn't scream. He just listened to the rhythmic squeak of his wheelchair's left tire echoing down the sterile white hallway. It was 0300 hours, the time when the facility felt less like a center for scientific advancement and more like a tomb made of reinforced glass and cold steel. Elias gripped the rims of his wheels, his knuckles white, feeling the phantom-aching legs that hadn't moved in 5 years. A constant reminder of the shuttle crash that had taken his ability to walk and given him this job as a low-clearance maintenance tech in the darkest corner of the galaxy. He wasn't a hero, he wasn't a soldier. He was just the guy who fixed the atmospheric scrubbers so the scientists could breathe while they did things he tried hard not to think about. But tonight was different, because the containment unit at the end of the hall wasn't empty anymore. Through the heavy blast doors, a soft, pulsating violet light spilled out, casting long, strange shadows against the floor. Elias rolled closer, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs, driven by a curiosity that he knew could get him fired or worse. He keyed in his maintenance code, the door hissing open to reveal the observation deck. And there she was. Suspended behind 6 inches of hyperglass was not a beast, not a xenomorph, but a woman. She was breathtaking, with the kind of sharp, aristocratic beauty that reminded him of old Earth nebulas, her skin pale and flawless, with a faint, bioluminescent shimmer that seemed to breathe with her. She looked human, perhaps resembling the striking features of Eastern European descent. Yet her ears tapered into elegant points, and her hair was a cascading waterfall of liquid silver that floated in the zero-gravity field of her cell. She was wearing a simple, fitted gray tunic and pants provided by the facility, clothes that looked too sterile for someone so vibrant. She was floating in the center of the cell, knees drawn to her chest, looking small, looking defeated, looking exactly how Elias felt every morning when he woke up and saw his chair next to the bed. He watched her for a moment, mesmerized, until her eyes snapped open. They were violet, swirling with nebulae, and they locked onto him with an intensity that made him freeze. She didn't snarl. She didn't attack the glass. She just looked at him with a profound, crushing sadness. Elias, moving on instinct, rolled his chair right up to the glass. He shouldn't be here. If Dr. Vane found him, he was dead. But he couldn't look away. He raised a trembling hand and pressed his palm against the cold surface. Inside the cell, the alien girl's eyes widened. She uncurled slowly, drifting through the stasis field until her hand mirrored his on the other side of the glass. Her fingers were long and slender. A voice echoed in his head, not a sound, but a feeling like the vibration of a cello string. "You are broken too." It wasn't an insult. It was a recognition. Elias gasped, looking around the empty room. "I'm not broken," he whispered, his voice raspy from disuse. "I'm just grounded." The girl tilted her head, her silver hair drifting around her face like a halo. Grounded, like a ship with no sky. The connection was instantaneous, a psychic bridge that bypassed language and went straight to the soul. Over the next 3 weeks, Elias risked everything. Every night shift, he would disable the audio sensors in Sector 4, a trick he learned bypassing the firewall for free movies, and sit by the glass. He learned her name was Lyra. She was a queen of the Ethel Guard, a diplomat whose ship had been shot down by the very people now holding her prisoner. They called it containment and research, but Lyra showed him the truth through their mental link, flashes of needles, searing lights, and questions about her people's energy shielding technology that she refused to answer. She was strong, incredibly so, bearing the torture with a regal silence that terrified her captors. But with Elias, she was just Lyra. She was curious about the wheels he sat in. She thought his beard was funny. She had a dry, sharp wit that made him laugh for the first time in years. "Why do you stay?" she asked him one night, her mental voice soft, as she floated cross-legged in the air. "You have the codes. You could leave." Elias looked down at his paralyzed legs. "Out there, I'm a cripple. I'm a liability. Here, I'm just part of the furniture. Invisible." Lyra's eyes flashed with a sudden, fierce protectiveness. "You are not furniture, Elias. You are the only source of warmth in this frozen hell." That was the night everything changed. The alarms didn't blare. They screamed. Red lights washed the facility in the color of blood. Elias was down in the maintenance tunnels fixing a hydraulic leak when the PA system crackled to life. Code black. Asset liquidation ordered. Prepare Subject 89 for vivisection immediately. Extraction team inbound. Ice flooded Elias's veins. Vivisection. They were going to kill her. Not just kill her, take her apart. He dropped his wrench, the clang echoing in the tunnel. He could hide. He could roll into the shadows, wait for the extraction team to leave, and pretend he never knew her. He could survive. That's what he always did. He survived the crash. He survived the rehab. He survived the loneliness. But then he remembered her eyes. You are not broken. Elias grit his teeth, grabbing the wheels of his chair. Not tonight, he growled. He spun the chair around, ignoring the burning in his shoulders, and raced toward the freight elevator. He wasn't a soldier, but he knew this building better than the architects did. He knew that the ventilation shafts in Sector 4 had a manual override that bypassed the security grid. He jammed the elevator button, watching the numbers climb agonizingly slowly. When the doors opened on the containment level, chaos had already erupted. Armed guards were swarming the hallway. Elias didn't hesitate. He pulled a fire suppression canister from his utility belt, standard issue for maintenance, and hurled it down the hall. It exploded in a cloud of thick chemical fog. Fire in Sector 4, he shouted, pitching his voice to sound like a panicked guard. Confusion rippled through the squad. In the mayhem, Elias rolled low, cutting through the smoke, his movements silent and precise. He reached the control console for Liar's cell. His hands flew over the keyboard. Access denied. Access denied. Come on, he muttered, sweat stinging his eyes. He pulled a localized EMP emitter from his pocket, a little device he'd built to scramble the breakroom vending machine when it stole his money, and jammed it into the console's data port. The screen flickered, blue code cascading into static. The heavy blast doors groaned. Inside the cell, the stasis field collapsed. Lyra fell to the floor, coughing, her bioluminescence dim. Elias rolled into the room. Lyra, we have to go. She looked up, weak and disoriented, but when she saw him, a flicker of hope ignited in her eyes. Elias? She croaked, her physical voice raspy but melodic. Get on, he commanded, patting his lap. It was a ridiculous escape vehicle, a maintenance technician in a wheelchair, but it was all they had. Lyra stumbled forward, her legs weak from weeks of zero-gravity suspension. She collapsed onto his lap, her arms wrapping around his neck, her scent like ozone and wildflowers filling his senses. Hold tight, he said, spinning the chair around. The guards were realizing the fire was a diversion. The asset is loose. Kill on sight, a voice roared. Elias gunned the electric assist motor on his chair. It whined in protest as he shot out of the cell, banking hard to the left toward the service corridors. Bullets sparked against the metal walls around them. Lyra flinched, burying her face in his shoulder. They will kill you for this, she whispered, her voice trembling. Let them try, Elias panted, navigating a sharp turn that lifted one wheel off the ground. He drove them into the labyrinth of steam tunnels behind the walls. It was dark, hot, and loud. Where are we going? Lyra asked, her strength slowly returning. The cargo docks. There's a supply shuttle leaving in 10 minutes. If we can hack the manifest, we can hide in the hold. It was a desperate plan, a suicide mission, really. They reached the cargo bay, catwalks, suspended high above the loading floor. The shuttle was there, engines priming. But between them and the ship stood Commander Vane and a squad of elites. They were trapped. Vane looked up, seeing them on the grate. It's over, Elias. You traitorous half-man. Give me the creature, and I might let you live in a prison cell instead of a coffin. Elias stopped the chair. The catwalk was a dead end. Vane raised his rifle. Lyra tightened her grip on him. Elias, put me down. I can distract them. You can surrender. Her mental voice was full of sacrifice. She was willing to die to save him. She was willing to go back to the needles so he wouldn't be shot. Elias looked at the squad of soldiers, then looked at the girl in his arms. He saw the fear she tried to hide. He saw the life she deserved. He looked at the gap between the catwalk and the shuttle's open loading ramp, a gap of 10 feet. Impossible for a man who couldn't walk. Impossible for a heavy wheelchair. But he looked at the hydraulic pressure gauge on the wall next to him. Lyra, he said, his voice deadly calm. Do you trust me? She looked at him, confused. With my life, Elias reached out and grabbed the high-pressure steam release valve. Then hold your breath. He didn't surrender. He didn't put her down. He cranked the valve and slammed the chair's joystick forward. I won't leave you, he whispered, a vow that cut through the noise of the facility. He drove the chair off the edge of the catwalk. For a second, they were flying. Gravity reached up to grab them, to pull them down into the abyss of the cargo bay floor. But then something miraculous happened. Lyra screamed, not in fear, but in power. Her eyes glowed a blinding white. The air around them shimmered and warped. She wasn't just telepathic. She was telekinetic, but she had been too dampened by the stasis field to use it until now. Fueled by his courage, by his refusal to let her go, she grabbed the kinetic energy of their fall and twisted it. The wheelchair didn't drop, it glided. A cushion of violet energy erupted beneath his wheels, slamming them onto the shuttle's ramp with a heavy metallic clang just as the ramp began to close. Bullets pinged harmlessly off a shimmering barrier Lyra had thrown up behind them. They tumbled into the dark hold of the ship, the heavy doors sealing them in darkness. The roar of the thrusters engaged, and the crushing G-force pinned them to the floor. They were safe. They were away. Elias lay there in the dark, his chest heaving, his heart feeling like it might explode. He felt a hand on his cheek. The emergency lights flickered on, bathing the hold in a dim red glow. Lyra was hovering over him, her hair wild, her expression one of pure awe. She didn't look at his legs. She looked at his eyes. You flew, she whispered, a smile breaking across her face, radiant and true. We flew, Elias corrected, reaching up to brush a strand of silver hair from her face. Where are we going? She asked, the ship vibrating as it punched through the atmosphere, leaving the prison behind. Elias adjusted himself in his chair, feeling the hum of the engines, feeling more alive than he had since the day he lost his legs. He looked at the alien queen, the refugee, the girl who saw him when the world looked away. Anywhere, he said, and for the first time, the word didn't feel terrifying. It felt like a promise. We're going anywhere we want.